In this video, we're going to take a look at creating a virtual machine on Microsoft Azure Cloud and then connecting to it. So we're going to create a Linux virtual machine and then learn how we can connect to it over SSH. So the first thing we need is an Azure subscription. And if you're a student, you could maybe go here and sign up with your school email, and you'll get $100 Azure credit to use over the course of a year. If you're not a student, then your option would be to sign up for a pay-as-you-go account. And with a pay-as-you-go account, you get, I think, $200 to use for 30 days. And then after that, the charges would start to go onto your credit card. We are going to build an Azure Linux machine, and let's see if we can use some of the Azure free services. Azure Virtual Machines Linux, we get 750 hours free that we can use in the first 12 months. We're going to use this B1S. There's other sizes if you want ARM or AMD based, but we're going to just do the B1S, just the regular Intel based. So after we have our account, we get signed into it. It's time to start creating our resources. So all Azure resources go inside of our resource group. You can think of it as just like a bucket that holds similar resources together. And when we create a virtual machine, there's going to be, kind of the CPU information. There'll be hard drives, there'll be IP addresses, there'll be network cards, virtual networks, all of those things. And so we want them all together in one bucket so that when we're done with this assignment, we can just delete it. So let's create our first resource group. We'll just go up here and we'll search for resource groups. And we'll create one. And let's just call this mod 5 VM. Now I get to pick which region I want to put it in. I am going to pick probably the East or the West, US East or US West. They're a little larger. Let's pick US West 3. And I'm going to review and create, and then I will create. Okay, our resource group has been created. Let's create a virtual machine. So we'll search for it. And we will create it. We want just this standard Azure Virtual Machine. And when we come down to our resource group, we'll pick the one that we just created. Let's give this a name. We'll pick the region. We'll try to pick the same region that we put the resource group in. If it's not available, we might have to come back and pick a different region. But let's start out with the same one that we have our resource group in. Availability zones. Let's just do no infrastructure redundancy. This is just a test, just a sample to show us how to create a virtual machine and get used to Linux. So we don't really need any redundancy. Let's also just do a standard security type. For our operating system, let's use Ubuntu Server 24.04 LTS for long-term support. Let's leave it on the x64 architecture. Now here's where we pick the size that we want. We want a standard B1S, and if it's not selected for you, you can come in here and pick it. Okay. You can see all the sizes where we can search for B1S. Okay, so the standard B1S is what we want. That's what we get 750 free hours of. And if we didn't, it would be $759 a month. Hibernation's not supported, that's fine. Let's use an SSH public key to connect. And for our purposes, let's just leave the username as Azure user. Let's generate a new key pair. And let's just leave the name that it's picked for us. And we have to set our firewall to allow SSH. Next, we'll go to disks. We can just accept all the defaults here. It's going to create a new virtual network for us. Subnet, it's going to create a new public IP for us. We want that so we can connect to it. We want the basic security group. We're going to allow SSH. Let's delete the public IP and the NIC, the network card, when the virtual machine is deleted. We can leave all that blank for what we're doing, or leave that default for what we're doing. Let's just leave all that the default for what we're doing. Let's leave all of that as the default. Let's not tag it for right now, so we will review and create. And we get a validation passed. That means that there is a supply of B1S servers available in US West 3. If this fails, we would look at the error. The error might state that there are not B1S sizes available in the region we picked, so that we would go back and pick a different region. Everything looks good, so let's go ahead and create. We'll download the private key and create the resource. And we can see that our browser has downloaded the private key. Okay, our server has been created. Let's go home and we should see our name, virtual machine. So let's click that. And here in the overview page, we get a lot of good information. We can see what region we're running in. We can see the operating system. We can see the size. And the thing that we want is this public IP address. So we're going to come back to that. Okay, so let's take a look at how we're going to connect to this virtual machine if we're on a Windows computer. I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call it Keys. And I'm going to my downloads. I'm going to find the key file. It will end in a .pem. If you can't see the file extensions, come up to View, Show, and click File Name Extensions, and then you should be able to see it. I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to paste it in the Keys folder. All right, next thing I'm going to do is open the command line. So on Windows, it's CMD. Looks like this. Next, I'm going to come over here to this Keys folder. I'm going to right-click it and copy as path. Right now, I'm on the C drive, the hard drive. I'm in the users folder. In that users folder, I'm in a subfolder named Mike. I want to be in a different subfolder. So I want to CD for change directory. And then I'm going to paste. And this is that path that we copied. yours is going to look quite a bit different than mine. But now I can see that I'm in the keys folder right here. So I should be able to see that key that's in there, that private key that I put in, the PIM file. So let me do a dir, and I can see it. I have to be in the folder where that file is located in order to connect. All right, so I'm going to use a utility called SSH to make a connection to that server. When I make a connection to that server, it's going to give that server this private key. The server has the public key. If those match, if they're a key pair, then I'm authenticated and I'll have a prompt on that server. All right, so let's start off. We're in this keys folder. The utility that we're going to use is called SSH space -I space, and now the name of the private key. And if you type just the first couple letters, so mine is MOD, and then hit tab, it'll fill it out for you. Makes it really easy. Space. We want the username. And if you remember, when we created this virtual machine, we left it as Azure user. So that's the username. We need the @. It's the Azure user @. And now we need the public IP address of that server. And then press enter. You're going to get this message. Are you sure you want to continue connecting? Yes. Now, notice up here what my prompt looked like. It was C. It started with C. It had keys in it. It had this greater than sign. That is on my local computer. After I connect, I get a new, different looking prompt. It's green for starters. It says Azure user because that's who we're connected as. It's got the name of the server, and it's got this $sign. If you see this, any command that you type now will go into the Linux server. So let's just check the directory that we're in, pwd. So we're in the home Azure user folder on the Linux server. So we have a solid connection. Now, if I stop working on the server, right, I close it, I go about my day, and now I want to reconnect later. I have to come back to the command prompt. I have to change into the correct folder. Do a dir. I see the file. Then I'll need to SSH-I, give it the file name, Azure user @. Now I can pick back up where I left on my assignment because I'm connected back to the server. If I'm trying to connect to that server with a Mac, I will create a new folder on the desktop. I'll call it keys. When I created that virtual machine, the private key came to my downloads folder. So I'm going to put it in the keys folder. So let's open a terminal. I can just come up and search for term. And I need to get into this desktop and then eventually into keys. So I'm going to see where I'm at right now. I'm going to use pwd, print working directory. And I can see that I'm in users, Mike C. So I need to go to desktop. So I will cd space desktop. And if I type just a few characters and then hit tab, it'll fill out for me. And then if I pwd, I can see that I'm now in the desktop folder. And the keys file is on that in that desktop folder. So let's cd space keys. Okay, that looks good. And then I'm going to do an ls, a list, and I can see the private key. Now that I can see that private key, I need to change the permissions on it. So the command to change the permissions is chmod, chmod, space 400 are the permissions I want to give it. And then I need to give that file name. So again, if I just type the first couple letters and hit tab, it'll fill out. Okay, the file now has the correct permissions. So now I can connect to that server. So again, if I list the file, I can see it, so I'm in the correct folder. So the utility I'm going to use is SSH space -I space the name of the private key, type the first couple letters, hit tab. Then I need the username that we're going to connect as. And that was Azure user. If you remember when we created it, we just left that username as Azure user. @ is the server I want to connect to. And then I need this public IP address. It asks me if I'm sure I want to continue connecting. I'm going to say yes. And I know I'm on the server when I see Azure user @ I see the server name, Mod5 Linux was what we named it. It's in green and I've got this $sign. All of that is an indicator that I'm actually on the server. Remember, it looks different. I have this base, I've got my name. Things look much different when I'm on my local computer, when I'm working on my laptop. Okay, so any command that I put in here now will go to the server. So let's pwd, print working directory. We're in the home Azure user of the server. Okay, so some time's gone by. You're in a new location, you're ready to pick back up on your assignment. You need to reconnect to your server again. So we're going to come back into terminal. Okay, and notice this means our local computer or our laptop. So we have to get into this keys folder again. And that was cd desktop and then cd keys, and we can see the file. We don't need to change the file permissions. We only had to do that one time. Okay, so now we're ready to connect with SSH. Okay, and it's made the connection to our server. We can see it's green. We can see our username is Azure user @ and that's our server name, and we have our $sign. So again, now any instructions that we type in will be going and executing on the server that's in the cloud. All right, when everything is all done and you're all finished with your assignment, we want to delete these things that we're configuring. If anything is provisioned, that means it will cost us money. All right, so we want to get rid of those. So let's go into the resource groups. Okay, and these are all of the things that are configured when we create a virtual machine. All right, so that's why we're using a resource group. Keeps all this stuff together. And then when we delete the resource group, it deletes all of these resources, so we don't have to go through them one by one. All right, again, so when the assignment's done, when you're finished with everything, come in and delete the resources that you provisioned. It will save you money, and that's we're trying to get through the whole semester with our $100. Or if you're doing a pay-as-you-go, you want to get through as inexpensively as possible. So let's delete the resource group. And delete. And we can see it's deleting up here in the alert. If we click the alert, we can watch it. It will give us a notice when it's done. And then when it gives us that notice, we can come in to the resource groups, look, and it should be gone. All right. Mine's not gone yet because it's still working away up here. So that should be everything that you need to provision or create an Microsoft Azure Cloud Virtual Machine in Linux. And we can now connect to it, whether we're on Windows or Mac, we know how to connect to it. And when we're done working with the virtual machine, we know how to delete it.